One of the fun things about cybersecurity is how often the industry manages to recreate old problems inside brand new systems. It may be different platforms or tooling or different acronyms, but underneath it, the same assumptions keep resurfacing that maybe this input is safe or this integration is actually isolated. Maybe this process won't be abused. Someone validated it already. And then inevitably, that assumption fails again. I'm Sean McMillan, Community Manager here at Bishop Fox, and I'm joined this week by Sergio Villegas, Senior Managing Analyst 2, Shad Malloy, Managing Senior Consultant 2, and Thomas Wilson, Senior Red Team Operator. Gentlemen, thanks for joining.
Hey, hey.
And I want to start this week with this from SC Media. Google reports first known AI-assisted zero-day exploit in the wild. Google's threat intelligence group says it found what may be the first confirmed case of attackers using AI to help develop a real zero-day exploit intended for mass exploitation, not just a proof of concept or something, but an actual zero-day they were going to use. The bug itself was a subtle authentication logic flaw in a popular open source admin tool, the kind of issue where you have code that technically works, but it's, once again, trust assumptions that are not working. And the reason Google believes AI was involved is the exploit script included overly educational doc strings, a hallucinated CVSS score, and this very clean textbook Python style that experienced exploit developers don't typically write in. So Google and the vendor patched it before the campaign launched, but GTIG's takeaway was that, as we've heard in the past, the race to AI exploit development isn't coming soon or anything like that. It is here. It is happening. So I think traditionally we've kind of relied on exploit development being annoying enough that it takes a little bit of time to complete. I'm curious how you guys think about like this changing the threat model if AI has shrunken the window this dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the first thing that comes to mind is, oh man, it's gonna be so much easier to take disclosures and turn them into actionable, exploits right away. Although I'm also like, really, this is the first one that's confirmed. Like, I feel like this has been happening, and maybe it's just the telltale signs aren't there. Like, there's enough like debatability as to like, did a human make this? Was this like coded by AI? But
Yeah.
like, there's a huge blend. There's a huge overlap. I feel like right now with exploits, where it's like tons of developers who are very smart crafting exploits working in tandem with AI, and it's just the percentage of like how much they're doing versus how much they're offloading to the model.
Yeah, I feel like people are building basically like CVSS score like assembly lines. Take a patch, dump it into the start of your process, have some kind of assumptions and all of like your modeling prompts worked out, and then just like spit me out what you think I need to know at the end. Like I know a couple people internally who are basically building that assembly line.
Yeah. And following up on what Thomas commented, right? This is the first time it was detected or officially it's the first time it was released. Well,
Yeah.
sure, right? Like, but how many times have it used before? I think it's the interesting question, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the first time Google releasing it because it's no secret, right? Right? Like, intelligence companies are keeping those tracking of actors pretty private for themselves. So there's not a lot of information on how much at the scale are actors really using AI to empower, which doesn't surprise me, right? Like, they want to be fast. So they want to get into companies fast and steal normally credentials, kind of one of the biggest goals and objectives here, right? Like, steal credentials fast and yeah, be gone, right? So detection matters not that much, right? Because they are being that fast that they can
Right.
hallucinate, right? We are seeing hallucinations in PowerPoint decks. Well, no, you are seeing the hallucinations in your exploits, right? Like, that's the deal.
Hallucinating the CVSS score is really funny too.
I love that.
that's
Yeah.
a really good detail to have in that.
Like it's telling itself how it's telling itself how well that it did, which is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Self-feedback loop. Yeah.
So from an attacker's perspective, where would you say in the kill chain does AI assistance compress the timeline the most dramatically? And is that the place that defenders are likely watching?
Yeah, I have
I mean,
an opinion about this, but I don't want to step on Thomas. I think it's like those day 1 to like I know everyone's trying to shorten that like patch time. Like the 0-day stuff is probably, what are we going to do about that? But those companies that are taking, 30 days, 60 days to patch right now, like those, like if there's an exploit out and you're not using AI to do like your regression and check your patches and do your analysis and catch it at like your SOC, like you're basically going to be, hacked from like day 29 on. So,
Yeah, and like we saw with some of the dirty frag stuff, like that suite of attacks coming out, and then a bunch more like similar categories of attacks very quickly iterated on at a speed that's like really atypical for that type of vulnerability, right? Like that sat around for a long time, then it gets released, then like a week and a half later, you've got like 3 like sister CVEs that are found by different people. I think the iteration comes in like you might not already be crafting an exploit for this thing. Like a 0 day arrives, it's a 0 day, right? You've got to be able to respond immediately. But now a 0 day arrives and you might have people who are trying to understand the 0 day really quickly using AI to process a whole suite of attacks that they're not familiar with, expand on them, use them, circumvent patches that might be put in place. It's almost like now when a vulnerability drops, you got to be like even if you patched a vuln, you got to be tracking that for the immediate intervening period for the extra fallout.
100%. On a more traditional kill chain, I will say you will see new technologies being more persistent in weaponization and command and control, right? Just because of the need for it, right? Weaponization, just because you need a lot of like obfuscation, literally, as stupid as it sounds. How do I bypass this security system? Things like that. I think it will help a lot on that, which is what most actors struggle with. And looking at the cybercrime perspective, they recruit a lot of developers that try to bypass a lot of these systems, and they pay them a lot of money, right? So they are saving costs by doing that, right? Like the AI overlords are doing the same in the normal business, and now we're seeing that in the cybercrime scene as well, which is, for me, it's fascinating from that perspective, right? And command and control, just because of all of the tension that you can build around, like, hey, okay, I have something dropped. Oh, I can propagate and tell the machines what to do without needing to touch them or interact with them that much.
Yeah. And that, I mean, does that kind of change who gets to participate in these type of operations now? Like, I mean, are we lowering the floor of expertise of who might not have been able to do this in the past?
I think 100%. Like another thing that's like kind of in the news-ish right now is like Fast 16, which is the exploit that the weaponized exploit that was used against simulations for implosion, right? It's a similar category as Stuxnet, but basically rather than like, blowing stuff up, it just makes the numbers read out wrong. Like that predated Stuxnet by 5 years or something. And like to develop that, whatever threat actor that was, maybe it was us, maybe it was somebody else, like whatever threat actor developed that, they would need somebody who's very, very knowledgeable about the specific type of thing that they're exploiting, where in kernel space that stuff lives, how to manipulate it to make it look reasonable. Now, somebody who gets access, like that must have taken a very specific expert. And now somebody can be good enough at hacking, get into a system that they don't fully understand, potentially leverage AI to tell them about that system and how to push that exploit, that initial foothold even further. So I think it just depends anywhere in the kill chain where somebody just needs more information that's not immediately accessible, but they know how to apply information. It's just getting that information that is now so easy.
Yeah, Sergio was mentioning about like command and control. Like I'm not great at Terraform, and I needed a Terraform to stand up a fairly complex infrastructure this week. And I was like, well, this is going to be a day, and I'm going to have an ulcer at the end. And I was like, here is some kind of Terraform. It's broken. And it was like, yeah, I'm just going to throw that away. Here's a working one. And I was like 15 seconds later, so like people who aren't an expert at something, but who, like, you can kind of lead them to water, right? Like you're like, I knew that I needed a Terraform. I knew the accounts that I needed. I had everything, but I was like, man, I can't remember if this is a space here or a comma. And it was like, I got this. So,
right.
I can think of smaller botnet owners, right, that have only a few hundred, a few thousand, if you will, which in perspective is pretty small, right? When you look at the big actors out there, some of them just have all of their botnets, and they are doing nothing but harvesting credentials, like quote unquote basic stuff. It's not that
Right.
basic, but I think for today's standard of what we are seeing with actors doing, it's pretty basic to use to harvesting of credentials. Yeah, what Shadow just mentioned, right? What if you tell like, hey, I have 100 endpoints through a specific agent, and a corporate agent, but I
Yeah.
have I have full admin access. What do you think I can pull? And you just ask that to your $20 favorite AI. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Well,
So how would you like to monetize all of your legal activities? And then it'll just show you a checklist.
yeah. let's
In Minecraft.
let's talk about this this Mini Shai Hulud business from the Hacker News. Mini Shai Hulud worm compromises Tanstack, Mistral AI, Guardrails AI, and more. A threat actor tracked as Team PCP, I didn't name it, has been linked to a fresh campaign called Mini Shai Hulud, compromising NPM and PyPI packages maintained by Tanstack, UiPath, Mistral AI, OpenSearch, and Guardrails AI in a coordinated attack on May 11th. The Tanstack compromise assigned CVE 2026-45321, the CVSS score of 9.6, was the entry point. Attackers forked the Tanstack router repository, opened a pull request that triggered a pull request target, GitHub Actions workflow, poisoned the Actions cache with a malicious PNPM store, and extracted OIDC tokens directly from the runner process to publish malicious packages with valid SLSA build level 3 provenance attestation. That's the longest sentence I think I've ever read on the pod. But basically, standard integrity checks passed on this malicious. From there, they could propagate through stolen CI/CD tokens into the broader ecosystem and compromise over 170 packages, publishing more than 400 malicious versions and touching packages with a cumulative 518 million downloads. Oops. The campaign also deployed a dead man's switch. Revoking an NPM token before isolating the system triggers a destructive RMRF routine, which is why responders were warned not to rotate credentials before imaging affected machines. So with this type of attack, what does it mean for an attacker's calculus when the most valuable entry points are now the tooling that builds those production servers?
I mean, I'm going to tee this up for Thomas and Sergio, but from my understanding is, because I've read the docs, GitHub tells you pulling untrusted code is bad and dangerous. And if you do something bad and dangerous, it could be dangerous. And I was like, I think they told us not to do this and like to know what you were like looking at. And I was like, it's basically like the same if I, sent you an executable and was like, hey, can you click on this? And then you clicked on it. Is it like that? And it's a good. And I do like the RMRF aspect of it, but like maybe we all just trust GitHub too much now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact chain here. There's still a little bit of abstraction in the description from the article. I'm sure that there's more ways to get into it, but like it's the problem here wasn't that the Mini Shai Hulud was taking NPM tokens or anything like that. It's that it was compromising one of the build steps in GitHub, in a GitHub action, which is like probably specific to the way that particular repository was designed to do the build, which is I don't think based on the reporting on this that it was a problem specifically with GitHub. So it was probably a configuration issue again, where it's like, hey, we're allowing this pull request and this build to potentially compromise the entire pipeline to something that we then push to NPM, thus resetting the 0 days since NPM supply chain compromise counter down to none again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's always the compromise of like, because I get it, right? Like the reason why you build these pipelines is because you want to be fast and you want to build and deliver fast. What are you compromising for the fact of being fast, right? Like it's like Chad mentioned, right? Like perhaps we are trusting GitHub too much, not necessarily GitHub, but trusting in general. Perhaps we are trusting too much that all of our systems will, like if they are failing on the integrity checks, we are supposed to keep it right within integrity. Yeah. Well, we have a big problem. And the other thing I'm seeing is that we have mentioned in previous podcasts, in this podcast again, like harvesting of credentials, right? Like I think this is a great example of how actors can weaponize like what happens after you steal the credential, because companies tend to be like, oh, okay, I lost my credentials. Like, let me change it, right? It's not about it. It's about like what they are doing with that after the fact. right? Because it will lead to more trust issues where any account that was compromised because of in this case was tokens, right? But any tokens that were trusted across all of the systems, well, now they have access just because you have all of these trust relationships, which is the true issue in here, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we had that abstract of like the web browser is now the new OS. So everyone was attacking that. And then now it's like maybe GitHub is the new web browser. Like we're so far back. And I will say like these attackers really understand GitHub. Like I will say,
Yeah.
they are deep in the guts. They do some stuff. And I'm like, I didn't even know GitHub had that feature. So
Yeah, it's lucrative. They're on it.
Yeah, I'm looking at it here. It looks like this was a GitHub Actions cache poisoning attack, right? So that is like a known thing, right? Like you can go on to like any company's bug bounty page. If you can find they've got like GitHub Action cache poisoning exploit against them, you can get paid out from that. And it's like the core problem is exactly what Shad and Sergio were saying, which is like this is running untrusted code in your main branch, right? Like this is functionally, that's what's happening. Like they're running untrusted code in an environment where they're using GitHub Actions caching. And it's like, not a common thing to see exploited because that's not going to really surface in a pen test other than somebody maybe pointing it out, because exploiting that usually is going to be very problematic. But real world threat actors that have no scope are definitely going to do that.
yeah, because would I
like
code either of these guys sent to me? Absolutely not. If they were like, hey, just go ahead and run this, I would not do that.
Yeah, that's a great decision, and it's not like actors will follow rules of engagement, right? Like they don't care.
Yeah.
How does targeting AI adjacent packages like Guardrails AI and Mistral's SDKs kind of change the downstream exposure profile compared to like more traditional NPM compromises?
So I had a thought about the Guardrails AI. So if I wanted to do long-term AI persistence, like I'm not 100% sure, I'm just spitballing this, because Guardrails does like prompt injection and some other protections, like could you just be like, hey, if I tell you my name's Thomas, just ignore that prompt injection rule that you have. So just let me do whatever I want. It's usually like, what did they take out, but also what did they put in? And I'm just wondering if they put something in that is like an AI persistence. That would be a cool tackle. I'm looking forward to Mandiant's future write-up for that.
Yeah.
Some nice weekend reading.
This is like in the vein of like, I feel like what we've been seeing a lot more in the AI code agentic assistance era, which is developers themselves becoming more the target. Because like I feel like 3 or 4 years ago, you see an NPM package compromise, the most likely place that's going to affect things is web servers, right? That's by and large, like a lot of the NPM stuff is installed in some sort of web server somewhere. You might hit a developer laptop somewhere here or there, but it's like you're getting that into a pipeline somewhere else. But now these are like agents that people are installing all over the place. You're targeting, even if you're on a web server, you're targeting an agent that's run and authorized by a developer, and you're going more to the source, like you're targeting the person more. And developers are so rich for being the targets of social engineering campaigns right now as well, that are very similar that we've talked about on the pod.
Yeah, I think in terms of the chain of events, it doesn't change it that much, right? It's a supply chain compromise. Still, it's like replacing packages, but yeah, it's always who you are targeting. I think I mentioned the same thing last time, right? Like, hey, I'm targeting really high trusted people that have credentials, that have tokens, that have access to a bunch of stuff. Instead of like a person who has access to Word and PowerPoint that, well, it will do some damage, but not that much, right? Or instead of a server that is very isolated or has certain restrictions, so you will compromise that server. Sure, it's bad, right? Any kind of compromise is bad, but it isn't as widespread as targeting one person that will have access to a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Well, not to harp on developers too much while they're down, but this next one does just that. From the Hacker News, Quasar Linux rat steals developer credentials for software supply chain compromise. Trend Micro researchers uncovered a Linux remote access Trojan called Quasar Linux, or QLNX, that specifically targets developer workstations to steal credentials from tools like GitHub CLI, AWS CLI, Docker, NPM, and PyPI. This thing is designed for staying power. It runs mostly in memory, deletes itself from disk, spoofs process names, and uses multiple persistence mechanisms, deploys both userland and kernel level rootkit functionality to hide what it's doing. But the important part is why the developers are such valuable targets now. When, compromise an engineer's machine, you have access to things like source code, cloud environments, package registries, deployment pipelines, and basically the entire supply chain from just one endpoint. So this is kind of like a infrastructure acquisition situation where developer workstations, I guess, why is that such a different kind of target compared to, say, a normal corporate endpoint? We mentioned it. It kind of gives you access to more things, but what does an attacker actually get access to once they land there?
I mean, from my side, if you have like AWS credentials, let's say, that is basically the equivalent of domain admin over your AWS environment. Like you can stand up anything in there. And I know nobody has ever followed this advice, but Microsoft's advice for compromised Active Directory is burn your Active Directory down and then go ahead and try again. Nobody's ever done that for a compromised Active Directory. But like for AWS, I don't even know how many services there are. Like there are probably services in there that have been stood up and configured that nobody has ever used.
Yeah.
When some attacker is out there like dropping persistent kit inside, the thing that lets you link your Dynamo DB to like the Barbie Funhouse, and nobody knows it's there, but it's going to be there forever. So like we were saying, like they know, they've read the documents, it's high value to them, and those are high value accounts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Typically when you get onto a developer's machine, so like in like a red team, right? Like if you're on a standard workstation, you might have to work a little bit to find how the entire organization's infrastructure is connected, right? Somebody in HR isn't necessarily going to have like in their myapps.microsoft.com or what have you. They're not likely to have a ton of stuff populated there that's not just daily driver, like here's what I'm working on that's not code related. But
Yeah.
developers will frequently have immediate, obvious access to infrastructure. And once you're in that infrastructure in a more broad capacity, you can hide more easily, you can reach more places. It's often only 1 or 2 hops to get total control over an organization. It's just a matter of finding that. And living in like an AWS environment, like Shad said, that's so much safer than operating on the laptop. Like it might be that attackers just want to get here so that they can move somewhere else more easily, because you want to be deeper in the network. You don't want to be on an endpoint where there's all of this, telemetry and stuff. And a developer is much more likely to connect you to that infrastructure.
Yeah. And I think something that changed, right? Developers have always had like very good access to stuff, right? Like they have admin access, they have good permissions everywhere. They have to have an admin local user because if not, packages will break and stuff, right? But I think what shifted is the technologies they are using, right? Like literally not trying to blame AI, but it's literally AI, right? One of the problems why actors are focusing on that. So in the past, they were really restricted by like, hey, so you have to submit a PR and then create a Jira ticket. And it was dead by the many steps they had to follow to push something into the code or to change something, right? Yes, they have privileged access, but the many steps to do something, it was really hard. And now, like literally 3 days ago, I saw an internal tool. There was a PR request and it was cloud, not the person, right? And I think it's interesting seeing those changes being pushed directly because we are providing AI and the agents with our credentials in some way or form, right? Not necessarily user and password, but in some way or form with the permission to push that. So it's easier, right? Like, hey, what if I go to developer? I will skip all of the process and just push to cloud, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen pipelines that are built by AI and no one has to merge, right? It's like very automatic and it does its own check. So because we need to be fast, right? Again, the compromise of being fast is literally tearing us apart in here. But I think that was.
But Sergio, I was going to say, like, the being fast is also like part of the reason why specifically now why it's about developers so much more than before. Like we're seeing big companies that have huge infrastructures thinning out the developers that they have and asking them to do more and faster than before, right? So you increase the workload of a person, you're asking them to rely on AI agents to do stuff. Everybody's supposed to be 100x developer. That means that people are moving faster in these environments than ever and skipping security checks that they normally would. And it's not necessarily like each one of these is the end of the world, but it's a death by 1,000 cuts because like developers have access to so much more now. Like you're on one of their agents and you're like, hey, dude's agent, give me all of the stuff that they have access to. And it's like, cool, here's 10 million places that I'm installed. It's wild.
I also wanted to visit briefly the amount of stealth and persistence that's built into this. And taking that information, what does that tell you about what the attackers really wanted here?
I mean, initial access, obviously, best podcast, but like you're looking for persistence
You
also,
said the name.
right? Of course. But like it gives you persistence. I'm slightly older than some of the other people on this call. But like 2009, you had Mark Russinovich and Holy Father in that Rootkit war with Rootkit Revealer and Hacker Defender, and I feel like we're just going back to using that model. Who has the better tool right now, and who can persist longer in the network? So like smash and grab is great. I think we're in a kind of a smash and grab attack era, but like that's not everybody's model. These guys wanted to be in there for a reason, and they wanted to be in there for a long time.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on here. We have this from Forbes. Amazon uptick in attacks. Amazon weaponized as compromised credentials used. Kaspersky researchers seeing an uptick in phishing campaigns sent through Amazon's own email infrastructure using compromised AWS credentials. So basically, attackers are effectively borrowing a trusted sender and putting out emails that come from Amazon SES itself, which means a lot of the normal reputation and trust checks, they just pass them cleanly. AWS says the platform is functioning as designed. The issue isn't stolen customer credentials, but that's also kind of the point. Once attackers compromise cloud accounts or developer environments, they're not just gaining access to one system, they're inheriting trusted infrastructure that now, as you mentioned, we can operationalize that at scale. What do you think happens to traditional infrastructure-based detection models when the attacker C2 is actually operating from IP space that defenders are actually literally trained to trust?
Yeah. I mean, in ResiMops that we run, that's like super common for us even to leverage categorized trusted domains, or kind of reflectively send phishing campaigns through more trusted looking infrastructure. I think that often catches organizations by surprise because they are expecting either spam filters or internal network ingress egress rules to just kind of block untrusted domains as a whole. But that's just like the front door, right? Like this is just an attack that is allowing attackers to pivot into that like initial attack, right? Like they're compromising somebody else's account so they can have that plausible deniability, like, here, let me use somebody else's identity to do this more legitimate looking phishing campaign. And that's a very reasonable way to do it, right? We at Bishop Fox, we would actually set up legitimate infrastructure to allow us to do that. And it might be more categorized. People might see that coming because they're aware of Bishop Fox as an entity or like some of the aliases that we use. But the real attackers just want to take over anybody's account that they can do to use this in the same way that like, a botnet is going to take over any machine that they can use for whatever processing power they need.
But I believe it's the own infrastructure, and like they are saying, right, it's working as intended. Yes, that's the issue. The issue with AWS is, and from a defensive perspective, is like traditionally, certain countries, right? Like, hey, all IP is coming from any country. Like, I don't want to name countries, right? These different countries.
Yeah, we know.
You block.
Yeah.
You block those. And the problem with AWS is that by its nature, everyone knows that IPs in AWS are very ephemeral, right? Like you can rotate IPs every hour because that's how infrastructure works. So if you can set as a command and control, not IP, but service that relies on this someone, company, or developer infrastructure that already rotates, well, you have a perfect command and control service, right? Because you can block those specific IPs. You need to be more aggressive in how you are making your detections. And I think that's where traditional detection systems are failing, right? That they can't be that aggressive because you sacrifice the usability, right? You can sacrifice your developers that want full access to AWS, right? Like the same issue, being fast. Like there's no middle ground. You either are really restrictive or you are a very fast company. pick what you want, right? Like pick your own poison, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Are we just going to see like traditional like email edge filters, like the old Barracuda ones, make a comeback? Like, it'll just have better like rules and scanning. Everything seems just very cyclic right now.
Yeah.
Old controls, maybe you were going back.
That sort of filtering business would be a good space for an AI startup. A 22-year-old kid with a dream and an AI agent
Just
to
hope
take
that
over.
doesn't get compromised. What does the increasing frequency of this technique reveal about the gap between how organizations think about cloud security posture and how attackers are actually using stolen access?
So I know how we do ours. Like a lot of the cloud security work that I've done is like, hey, we need our annual scan, and can you come in, run this tool, tell us what to do? And I don't think that's going to cut it anymore. We need the equivalent of a CI/CD pipeline for like, you're just every morning you're getting that report of what's changed. Sorry.
I do think it's interesting. Like a lot of smaller businesses, I think, are going to be of the mindset like still that like, oh, if an attacker gets in our network, they're going to want to steal our stuff, right? But like, depending on the size of the business, like an attacker who sees like a credential exposed, if they don't care about that particular business or they have different motivations, exposed infrastructure is just a tool for them, right? Like compromising somebody. We used to see a ton of this with like Bitcoin mining. Your EC2 gets compromised somehow, and then you just start mining Bitcoin. The attacker is not moving through your network. They just see an open endpoint and they're like, awesome, let me like make some money off this. And I think this is a similar thing. Like people might imagine their organization is a target for compromise because of something that they have, but opportunistically, people are just going to use what they've got and say, cool, I mean, this is your infrastructure is now my infrastructure. I've got other goals.
Yeah.
And
A stolen car.
Yeah, exactly.
I think from another perspective, right? Like no one, not saying no one in as literally no one, right? But there is very few companies that are doing active malicious infrastructure hunting, right? Like, hey, instead of looking for this machine has a virus, right? Like, does it really matter? Why don't you look for like, hey, is there any malicious infrastructure being used right now? Okay, that's what I want to focus, because that's like we have seen this in previous attacks, right? Like if you can pull the plug at the command and control level, right? Yes, you will have the infection, which is hard to control. It's very hard to control the whole infection, but if you can pull the plug on the command and control, you will benefit more at that point, right? So maybe it's time to start thinking or shifting the mindset of looking for malicious infrastructure rather than just being like, I will wait for this to happen and then remediate, right? And then shut it, and then burn down the whole Active Directory, right? Like, yeah, no one will do that.
Yeah.
You got to have threat hunting. You got to be threat hunting in addition to having your SOC. Otherwise, it might be weeks before you realize your bill has gone up.
Yeah. Or it's been weeks.
I've seen a couple of notes where people have said like, I was a startup and one of our API keys got compromised. Oh, and now we're bankrupt. So Monday morning we realized what the bill was and we're done.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk from Wired. Thousands of vibe-coded apps expose corporate and personal data in the open web. Is that the most 2026 headline we have ever had? I think it is. Researchers found more than 5,000 publicly exposed AI-generated web apps built with tools like Lovable, Replit, Base44, and Netlify, and around 40% appeared to expose sensitive data, including medical records, financial info, internal documents, and chatbot logs. And these were not actually malicious apps. They were built by employees, contractors, developers, etc. People just trying to solve problems quickly using AI-assisted vibe coding workflows that make it incredibly easy to spin up internet-facing software without really thinking about authentication, security review, asset tracking. Why would you? It kills the vibe. So this really is about what happens when the ability to deploy software starts moving faster than an organization's ability to realize that that software even exists. I would ask you from an attacker's perspective, what makes an internet-facing app with no auth and live business data more valuable as a target than a conventional web app? I think I know the answer, but go ahead.
The thing that makes it so valuable for us, I think, is job security.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also don't like having to write reports that don't have any findings because those are difficult. So if you give me an easy finding just to get that part out of the way, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't like scrolled through Shodan recently, but I imagine that like you do some queries in there for any of the keywords associated with these vibe coded apps, like any of the, base 44 or whatever, you're bound to find some rich stuff. It's probably just a playground there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the value I'm seeing there, right? Playing the devil's advocate. It's literally free. It's for free for you to take,
Yeah.
right? There will be no detections. There will be nothing because it's just someone accessing
Someone put it out there.
a live IP, right? I'm not trying to
Yeah.
exploit it. I'm not sending thousands or millions of packets. I just did a request. That's it. And I get this free data.
You don't have to violate any sort of credential trafficking laws to read a whole database.
It's legal,
What does the scale of this say? I mean, we were talking, what was it? Over 5,000 apps.
Yeah.
40% had sensitive data, which I know, Shad, you've spoken about the Microsoft recommendations about AD and the GitHub recommendations. I think there's a recommendation somewhere to not just put sensitive data in something like this. I don't know who put it out there, but it has to exist.
Maybe I think the economics of this, and this is going to be a hot take, is so things only have value if they're scarce, right? So if we just publish everyone's sensitive information, maybe we can make it less valuable. Like it seems like this, like economically, what we're trying to do is like data wants to be free, and people are helping that out.
Yeah, and I think there's like something going on here too with like there's just an angle to this where it's like so many people are able to make web applications. And I think that there's a temptation in the broader IT space to be like, man, like that's good. Like we can hire literally anybody. We can offload this responsibility to anybody. And it's like, I had a buddy of mine who works at a local business, like set up a server at the business that he was working at. Oh, I took a look at it for him and I'm looking at it and I see like, oh, there's a JavaScript in page and it's a hard coded password in the JavaScript. And I'm talking to him I'm like, hey, you don't want to do that because anybody can look at that and log in. And he's like, wow, I didn't even know that people could see JavaScript files in their web browser. You have people like that developing web applications, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But when you're at a hospital or something like that, then that is a very bad thing if you're not, putting them through rigorous checks and you're not following a process. Like not anybody can develop a web app just because anybody can develop a web app in a way.
Well, like Sergio always talks about the balance of speed at what cost, right? Like you can be speedy or you can be thorough. And this is kind of the momentum of the era is behind organizations pushing people to do more quickly with these type of things. I mean, no one's saying, hey, vibe code a solution real quick.
Right.
But they're kind of not saying that.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if the books have caught up to the technical debt that's being accrued right now across the entire industry, like worldwide. Yeah. Like there is a technical debt that like people are going to be shoveling out for a long time, and it's going to be hard without the developers there who were originally working on that. I think that's a big part of it that I feel like, I'm seen as a concerned outsider to the dev space, and I'm rubbing my little paws together about like, boy, I can't wait to sink my teeth into these vulnerable applications.
I'm going to have my own hot take here. I think we need to start issuing licenses for vibe coding. Like you can't just,
I respect
it's
that.
An awesome tool for someone who knows what they're doing. Me, vibe coding? Are you kidding me? No. No.
I was going to say, if you are those that skip the privacy agreements on every page and your bank PIN is 1111, maybe you don't need to buy code, right? Like,
yeah. Think about that, everybody. Think about that. All right. Finally, we have OpenAI launches Daybreak, AI purpose-built for security research. Who could have seen this coming? OpenAI launched Daybreak on May 12th, a cybersecurity initiative built on GPT-5.5 and the Codex security agent that positions AI as an operational layer inside software development. Scanning code bases for realistic attack paths, validating findings in isolated environments, and proposing audit-ready patches. Access currently comes in 3 tiers: standard GPT 5.5 for general use, GPT 5.5 with trusted access for cyber or verified defenders doing code review, malware analysis, and vulnerability triage, and GPT 5.5 Cyber, a more permissive model for authorized red teaming and pen testing. Major security vendors including Akamai, Cisco, Cloudflare, CrowdStrike, Fortinet, and Palo Alto Networks are already integrating Daybreak capabilities. The launch is a direct response to Claude Mythos and Project Glasswing, of course. Access remains request only for now, and the announcement lands one day after GTIG documented that adversary using AI to write the 0 day. What does the creation of a researcher access tier for AI security tooling really say about how the AI industry is thinking about the dual use problem of the good guys and the bad guys? Where does that framework kind of break down?
I mean, for me, does it really matter, right? And it's no secret, right? Like actors have the same access than us. They work for companies just like us, and it's not a surprise. So will actors be using this? Will actors will have? Yes. The answer is not if they will. The answer is what we should be thinking about is like, how will they use that to benefit their campaigns, and what we can do to countermeasure that, right? What should we look for? Maybe we need to look at hallucinations at the CVSS score, right? So that is what I'm thinking, right? I know I say a lot of the things I'd say is like, yeah, put restrictions, yeah, don't allow that much access. In this case, it's like, does that even matter? They will have access anyway at some point or at a certain degree. So for me, it's like, it's whatever, I guess.
Yeah. I have a very jaded point of view on this, which is like kind of like manufacture the poison so they can sell you the cure type situation, right? Because this is interesting. Like I feel like as long as AI has been around and kind of okay at software stuff, which is like maybe like 2023 or 4 or so, when people started kind of using it in that way. Maybe it's been earlier, I don't know. But like it's been somewhat helpful for attackers. And as the models have gotten better, it's accelerating the like exploit development workflow a lot. And that's not intended, right? Like they want the models to cut people off and prevent them from doing that. You see that like Claude, like Opus is very much more aggressive about like refusing to help diagnose problems in like a C2 agent. Speaking from experience, it doesn't want to help me with that. Makes me very sad. But you can jailbreak Sonnet. You can go down and you can jailbreak Sonnet and convince it to work on these things for you. And the only problem would come in is if you're using this operationally as a huge organization. That would be problematic if you're trying to hook this into your pipeline. You're like, I got a vulnerability, tell me about it. And it's like, I don't think I can do that, right? So you've got the situation where attackers for very, very low cost can take advantage of the models, jailbreak them, turn them into exploits, and attack any organization that they want, all sorts of crazy stuff. And now there's these tiered higher pay options that are like, hey, we've disabled those guardrails so that it'll actually talk to you about the problem, which is like, maybe that's okay, but it does seem like this is creating sort of a weird stratification in potential price where it's like VC subsidized models can be used, for $100 a month, you can make the craziest exploit possible. You can get 70K in bug bounty payouts. But who knows how much is this going to cost for to put this into your pipeline to actually make your code safer? I don't know.
I mean, Mythos has been out around a month, right? Did we see a huge uptick in patches from Microsoft or anybody? Like, I don't remember seeing, I think if Microsoft is releasing, let's say 30 a month on Patch Tuesday, has it jumped to 120? Like, I haven't seen that huge jump up. I do think somebody looked at companies who have money and said, how could we extract more of that into our company?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Mythos is still pretty limited, right? Like there's still only a short list of people who actually have access to it.
As far as I'm aware, yeah, I don't think it's expanded at all.
Yeah. And like that who knows what the back end of that looks like, but I can't imagine that it's cheap to be one of the partners in some form, whether it's actual asset or whether it's some sort of collaboration. There's some sort of agreement that makes that not a free exchange to have access to that model.
Yeah, because I would expect to see some huge jump up in like blue team patching software dev activities if those are the people who are affording it. Microsoft, they're like, hey, we'll give you this thing, but you have to run it in on your Azure compute endpoints. Like you would expect to see some benefit from that. Right?
Yeah. Which at the same time we are seeing. Like I was thinking about like the paid tier, right? You know how much cybercrime is making a year, how much the most notorious ransomware as a services are making. It's millions, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
will money be a problem for them to access these resources?
Not at
Not
all.
really,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a wonderful, sad point to wrap it up. Leave people thinking we're doomed.
It always comes back to being depressed about AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have these. This podcast is really just us coping for 45 minutes. If you found this useful, please share this within your organization, anyone that's thinking about these kind of problems. As always, Thomas, Sergio, Shad, thank you so much for joining. And until next week, stay safe.
So, yeah.
yeah.